Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is my review for Tyrant Season 1, Episode 2, State of Emergency. Now, if you guys remember last week's episode, I wasn't the hugest fan of it. I said it's probably FX's second weakest show, and I really wasn't that big of a fan of last week's episode. I don't know, I just didn't like it as much. However, this week's episode, I loved. I loved this week's episode. I thought this is the kind of show it needs to be. It was an extremely intense episode. Like, we're only on the second episode. The show's already really intense, and I feel like it's going to get even more intense from here. I'm really looking forward to seeing where the show goes from here, and I think it's going to be very, very interesting. So overall, I really enjoyed this episode, and this is the kind of show it needs to be. Definitely, it's a very good show. I will say I think the problem with this show is it's very graphic for FX. Like, I feel like this show would work better on either HBO or Showtime. I said this before, but I still think that's the truth. Like, FX is very good for this show because, at least they can, like, show a lot of violence and things like that. But it's probably the most violent show on FX right now. That's going to change when The Strain comes on. But for right now, it's the most violent show on FX. And I feel the show would work better on HBO or Showtime. That's just my opinion, though. But let's just get to this episode because I overall really enjoyed it. So if you remember the last episode, Barry and his family went to that airport. They were thinking they were going to leave, and they weren't leaving. So they're now driving away from the airport in a motorcade, and Yosef confirms that he has Bassem, and they're taking him to the hospital. So Barry tells Sammy that he's sorry. Yosef says some cryptic stuff, and then says he got confirmation that Jamal's attack was actually an assassination attempt. And Sammy is shocked, and Lila watches while Jamal is treated, and the wife bit right through his little Jamal, and that's why he drove off the cliff. So, that's true. She bit, like, right on his dick. So, like, that's probably why he drove off the cliff, because she wanted to kill him, basically. So, that was definitely very interesting. So, General Tarek tells Lila that the woman was a follower of Ayeb Rashid. She says she wasn't working alone. He says they are putting up checkpoints and are blocking supplies from man. She says there will be protests, but tells him to find Ayeb. And we then see a checkpoint where some people are brutally searched, and a woman gives her identification, and her trunk is searched. She is told there's a curfew and allowed to proceed. And she pulls onto a street, flashes her lights before pulling into a small garage. She has smugged Ayeb out, and he's greeted by Muhammad. Not Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali is dead. Not Muhammad Ali. This is not a terrorist. Then we find out that Samira was the woman that helped him. She gets a call from her father, Fawzi, and she asks where she is. She lies and says she's out buying food, and he says she should not be on the street because soldiers are killing people, and she promises to hurry. So Samira tells Ayeb that she has a bad feeling and says Tarek will kill him. He tells her she's been very helpful, but to go home and be with her father. He's preparing for a big move. He leaves in a van with Muhammad. So Barry's family come to the palace, and they have to stay there for security reasons. They basically have to stay there. But Yosef tells the teens what entertainments are available. They are plenty. And Barry then calls Molly and tells her Jamal is in surgery, but expected to make a full recovery. So Jamal's going to be fine, luckily. And he asks her to rebook their flights for right after the funeral. She says they can always get a seat on a plane or the whole damn plane. And she tells him she knows he doesn't want to be there, and she wants to know why. Barry says his dad asked him to stay right before he died. He says he wanted him to come back to help Jamal rule the country. And he says it's crazy. And Molly says his father's gone, so he can stop running finally. And he says this isn't like back home and asks to talk about it later, and he hangs up on her. And again, as you can see, he does not have the best relationship with his wife right now because she doesn't understand all about his past. Like, there's a ton of stuff that he's hiding from them. And we find out a little bit later, but basically, Ahmed then asks Nusrat why she doesn't want to be at the hospital for his father, and she says she's tired. And Lila tells him to take his wife back and says his dad will be in surgery all day. But Ahmed says he won't leave. She tells him he's a good son and will be a good husband. And he tells her to walk Nusrat to her car. Barry comes in and shakes Ahmad's hand. He tells his nephew he's there for him, and he goes with his wife. And Barry then asks Lila about Jamal. He asks what the injuries are and who the woman was. Lila says Jamal can tell him when he wakes and says he was asking for him. She says she didn't tell his brother that he tried to run again. She says maybe one day they can be honest about why he keeps running away. And here's something huge we find out. We see a young Barry and Lila at the beach. She climbs up into a cave and he follows her in. pulls off her bathing suit and begs him not to go to America. She pulls him into her arms. They kiss passionately, and she says this will give him a reason to come back. So back now, she tells him after 20 years, he's still running away, and he says that's his life now. She says he treats overprivileged kids with ear infection, and he says he has to call Molly. So basically, this girl, I thought this was definitely very interesting. This girl is one of Barry's ex-girlfriends, and basically what she's saying is, this is your life now, this should not be your life, you need to come back here. And it's going to be interesting to see, what do you choose. I thought that was definitely very interesting from here, and here's where the show just got really interesting after that. So, Ahmed calls Nusrat and is on the phone with him, and when her car is sabotaged by spikes under the tires, her window is smashed out, she's pulled out at gunpoint by armed teenagers, her seatbelt is stuck, most run off when they hear sirens. They tell the main kid they won't get her in time, but he pulls a knife and hacks her away at her seatbelt. So Em and Sammy shoot Skeet when Abdul pulls up and joins them. Sammy introduces them. Abdul tells them their grandfather was a great man. Emma says they didn't really know him, so it's weird. And then she gets a call from back home and takes it. She walks away, and Abdul tells Sammy that Emma seems nice. He says they're leaving after the funeral and wants to know if Abdul wants to hang out, and he agrees. So yeah, that was definitely very interesting. So Lila fusses at Tariq when Barry walks up, and she tells him that Nusrat was taken hostage. Barry asks what they want, and Tariq says they don't negotiate with terrorists, but Ahmed wants to know what they want. Ahmed leaves with Tariq. Barry tells Lila to call him when Jamal's out of surgery. He says he's going back to the palace. We then see a blockade in the streets, soldiers pouring out in trucks. In a small restaurant, Nusrat is tied up and begs the kids to let her go. Fameh says to shut up, and Yahya says, I don't know how to pronounce these names, sorry guys, tells her to be quiet. Ali says they should have run when they had the chance, and Fameh wants to swap Nusrat for his brother, who is in prison, and the other kids are nervous, so that was definitely very big. So Barry comes back and tells Molly about Nusrat, and she says she heard. John is there and says Tariq will go in hard, and he says Tariq likes to impose martial law and says the people holding Nusrat are just kids. So John says Tariq won't listen to him, but might listen to Barry. He's doubtful, but John reminds him he's an al-Fayad. And Barry says he has no standing here, and John says blood is everything there, and Molly tells him he should try. So John asks if he's comfortable doing it, and Barry says he's not, and John leaves them, and Barry looks at a portrait of his father in a military uniform, very displeased. And Wallet asks Ayab how long he'll be there, and he says he says not long. He said he's not comfortable with the weapons. Ayab grabs Wallet by the ear, says he's been collaborating with the Al-Fayyads, and the only reason he's alive is because he is his uncle. They get a call telling them Carmine's brother Fameh took Nusrat hostage, and Amira confronts her son Barry about not getting involved. She asks what it will take to compel him. He says he's only there to pay respects to his father, and she reminds him that he spent his whole life disrespecting him, and says he broke his father's heart his whole life. She says he's running away again, and he says he's going home. She says it must be nice that the pain of his family doesn't follow him to Pasadena. I mean, she does have a point. This is his family, and he needs to, like, be there for his family. This is his family, and he doesn't really seem to care about his family. That is a big thing. So she said she could have used a Pasadena herself once in a while, and she walks away from him disgusted. Molly overheard and gives Barry a look, and he glares back at her. And the soldiers work their way down the street. Barry's escorted to Tariq's temporary base. He asks for an update, and Tariq says he doesn't have time to brief him. Barry says he heard they were children, and he asks if Tucker told him that. Tariq says children are the same age as an American. He says he has given them 20 minutes, then is going in and killing them. And Fameh's cohorts say they won't negotiate. And Fameh says they should kill Nusrat. He says they put Kamal in prison for nothing. And they put Jamal in prison for nothing and he'll die there. She's freaking out. Yahia stares at her chest and she asks if he's ever seen breasts before. And he says he always wanted to. And she tells him there's a woman out there for him, but he won't find her if he stays there. And I thought this was a nice scene overall. She says he can untie her and they can go in the back so they don't die there. I mean, this was a sweet scene because it's kind of like he just wants a woman and everything, and that's why he kidnapped her. So Barry interrupts Tarek and says they are not done talking. He says he will go in and talk to them. Tarek says he can't tell Jamal that he let him get killed. Tarek says to go back to the palace or go home. He says he knows Tarek doesn't want Nusrat to get out so he can invoke martial law. And Ali says Ali says he's going to take Nusrat out and beg for their lives. They see Barry and he tells them he's unarmed. And Barry finally decides to talk to them because Ali says to let him talk. And Barry comes in slowly and asks Nusrat if she's okay. They ask how he is, and he says he's Barry. Then he says he's Bassem al-Fayyad, and they say he's a better hostage. And Barry says they will not get his brother, but they will all be killed in 3 minutes. He says to listen to him, and he says Tarek will not stop them, and will go after their father's cousins and uncles. And he says if they walk out with him, he'll see they are fairly treated. He says only an al-Fayyad can save you now. Tarek is angry at Barry's intervention and chastises Yusuf for not warning him Barry was coming. Barry then comes out with Nusrat and the boys. They're taken captive by the soldiers. Barry tells Tarek he has to let the boys go and show them mercy. He says they're just kids, and he gave them his word as an al-Fayyad. The boys are all shot in the head, they're all shot in the head right after that, by a soldier. Tarek shrugs and says in a month, one of them would have been at the bus stop with a backpack full of explosives. And Tarek adds, better than blood than ours. He walks away. Yusuf tells Barry that they need to leave. He says he saved Nusrat, and if not for him, she would be dead too. But he can't stop looking at the bodies of the boys younger than his own children, and they leave. So that was a really big scene right there. Definitely really big. So Dr. Cohen tells Jamal they were able to repair him, and he wants to know if it's gonna be able to work again. She says it should. Eventually, but they know more once he's healed. So he's kind of worried because he doesn't know if he'd be able to have sex again because, the girl bit right through it, so he doesn't know if he's going to be able to. Lila then sits in her chair, and Jamal asks her if she's enjoying this, and she looks at him and asks the doctor to wait outside. She goes, and Lila tells him that she loved her father, and he died the day of their son's wedding. Then he nearly unmanned himself and left her a widow, and asked how she could take pleasure in it. And he asks if she heard the doctor call him Mr. President, and Lila fills him in on what happened with Nusrat. Then she goes to tell Cohen that Jamal has to be out to deliver his father's eulogy at the funeral tomorrow, and says she must keep what happened confidential, which obviously that's really sad, they just give the funeral. So the doctor tells her not to threaten her. She asks how old her son Araya is now. She says she's heard her son has a beautiful smile. She thanks the doctor. That was enough threat. And Barry is there and asks how he is, and Lila says he's still Jamal, and she says she hasn't told Jamal what he did. She's crying. He goes to comfort her. She cries into his shoulders, and he shushes her and says it will all be okay. She wipes her eyes and says he needs to go to his brother. He does. She watches him walk away, then turns and takes a deep breath. And then what ends up happening is Jamal is riding the morphine pump. When Barry comes in, Jamal calls him a great American hero, and Barry says Tarek won't agree. Jamal says Tarek is a hammer, and sometimes you need a hammer. And then we see a flashback to their dad yelling at Jamal to get out of the car when Barry shoots the prisoner in the head and tells his dad it's done and to leave Jamal again. Jamal says he keeps expecting that their dad to come through the door angry, of course. Hits the morphine pump again and asks Barry to show him how to work it. So that was definitely really interesting. So Barry then lies awake, and he tells Molly he can't stop thinking about the boys, but she reminds him he saved Nusrat, and he says he understands their anger and powerlessness, and says that at their age he was so ashamed that his family was in the business of oppression. He says Fawzi could speak his mind, but he couldn't live with it, so he ran away and denied it all. And he says he watched thousands of hours on American TV to lose his accent and get away from it. That's why he hasn't told her anything, because he wanted to just run away from it all. Molly reminds him that he would never let her call him Bassem, and he says with his father gone, his old arguments don't hold up anymore. He says he's an al-Fayyad, and that means he's powerful there. He says if he runs away again, it's still on his head. He says whatever Tarek acts in his name, and Jamal is too weak to say no, there will be blood on his hands no matter how far he runs. So Molly asks if he's asking her permission to stay. He says that boy today died for his brother, and what should he say to his, what should he say to his? So then we go to the funeral, and it's really sad because the al-Fayyads all have seats of honor, including Sammy and Emma on the dais. And Sammy says what their dad did was cool, but Emma says he's no action hero and says it's all surreal. And Sammy gives Abdul a shy smile. And the IM starts the prayer. Jamal refuses to read the speech, and Lila says he agreed to it, but he says he was medicated. And Barry has to talk to Jamal and Lila stalks away. So Barry asks how much pain Jamal is in, and he says he can't be drugged and give the eulogy. He asks what he should say, and Barry tells him to forget the speech and speak the truth. He walks away, and Jamal takes a deep breath. And Lila asks Barry why he has a speech, and he tells her it's okay. And then Jamal walks to the dais for the king, supporting him, and addresses the assembly in front of a large poster of his father. And it's very sad, because he then greets the crowd and says it wasn't always easy being his father's son. He says it wasn't never easy, in fact. He says his father was a hard man to please, stubborn, demanding, but only a man like that could have healed the deep wounds inflicted by generations of civil strife and forge a lasting peace. So, Fawzi listens, as does Ayab, and Jamal says his father led their nation into the community of nations, and says he is there to remember not just the ruler, but the man, not just the father that raised this great nation, but his father that raised him and his brother. He says he taught them that without family, we have nothing, and we are nothing. And that was a really great speech there. I thought that was definitely a very great, I was very happy that he actually didn't read the speech, and he just said what came from his heart. And Molly asks Barry if he's okay, and he looks kind of uncertain. And then we see Barry look at a photo of him, Jamal, and his father when they were young. He calls Jamal. He tells him he asks what he would think if he stayed for a while. Jamal is thrilled, and Barry asks if that's the Vidicon that talking. He says, "Thank you, little brother." So Barry is going to stay. But the quick thing is he going to, is he going to, I guess he's going to stop running away now. I guess that's probably what's going to happen now. We're going to have to see what happens next, though. We'll have to see what happens with Jamal. Is he going to be able to ever have sex again? We don't know. That's something going to be interesting to see what happens there. What's going to happen with Barry? Barry, apparently, he has to stay, so what's going to happen with Barry? Do you think Molly understands? I think Molly does understand, but I think Molly at the moment, I think she's just kind of upset that he never really told her too much. Although in this episode we did find out he did tell her some things, like she didn't want her to call him Bosom ever, and I understand why he did that, but do you think he did the right thing in running away? I don't know, but luckily he's staying now, so what's going to happen? That's in my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Overall, I am enjoying this show, I will say that. I don't know if I'll watch, I will continue to watch it. I don't know if I'm going to continue to watch it because Finding Carter comes on next week, so I'm more interested in Finding Carter than I am in Tyrant. I'm sorry, it's just I'm more interested in that show than I am in this show. But I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for another classic review. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.